What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It is time to give you my game picks and predictions as we head into week number 3 of the 2024 college football season. Kind of a quiet weekend going into the third weekend of the college football season. Picking, 10 of the biggest games, in my opinion. I'm going to make predictions on these games and also give you your final score predictions as well. I really don't care about the final scores. What I really care about is just choosing the team that I think is going to win over the weekend. So we're taking, again, the 10 biggest games, pretty much, in my opinion, coming up this weekend and giving you game predictions for all those 10 games. And before I start my predictions here for week 3, going back to last week in week number 2, my record was 6-4, so I got 6 out of the 10 games right and then 4 out of the 10 games wrong. So not a bad record, but, week number 2, we did see a lot of chaos, and I did miss a lot of, really important games. I got my predictions wrong with some of the most important games over the weekend. So let's go ahead and get right into my predictions here for week number 3. Again, a kind of a quiet weekend coming up this weekend, so let's go ahead and get right into it with our predictions here for week number 3 of the 2024 college football season. We will start here with Arizona versus Kansas State. This game will be at 8 o'clock Eastern time. It's actually going to be tomorrow on Friday the 13th. This game will be on Fox. Kansas State favored by 7.5, and the over and under is at 58.5. And you look at both of these teams coming into this game, I feel like it's one of the biggest games coming up here this weekend, even though it's not on a Saturday. I kind of wish it was on Saturday because I feel like College Game Day probably would have gone to this game if this game was on Saturday. But either way, it's on a Friday to get us really started here for week number 3 of the season. I think if you look at both of these teams, I think they're both pretty even. You got two teams, home of the Wildcats, going at it here as well. You look at Arizona, obviously first-year head coach coming into the offseason and everything. We kind of wonder how good they were going to be. I feel like Arizona, I knew they were going to be pretty good, but maybe not, of course, the same team as they were from last year. But I think this game will pretty much decide how good this Arizona team is going to be. You look at Kansas State coming off that really close win against Tulane from last week. Do you feel like Kansas State obviously was kind of looking over, Tulane and looking ahead to the Arizona game? I really don't know, but, the Wildcats here, both of the Wildcat teams have been off to really good starts here in the first 2 weeks of the season. This is a tough one. I mean, I've been back and forth on this game. I think both of these teams are pretty even. And remember, this is not a Big 12 game. This is a non-conference game. It doesn't count as their Big 12 records. I think, home field advantage is going to be the difference. A turnover can probably change the difference as well. But I've been back and forth on this game. Really tough one to predict. So I'm going to go with the home field advantage. And I'm going to go with Kansas State here to win this one, 31-27. A little bit of a high-scoring game, but I feel like both of these teams, like I said, are pretty even. And I don't really care about the score predictions. I don't really feel confident with the score predictions and everything. All I care about is giving you the team that I think is going to win. So, again, Kansas State here in Arizona. This game will be at 8 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow night. And, I'm picking Kansas State here to win this one, 31-27. Next up, we got Alabama versus Wisconsin. This game will be at noon Eastern time on Fox. Alabama favored by 16, and the over and under is at 50.5. I mean, for a non-conference game between two really good powerhouse teams in the Big Ten and then, of course, in the SEC with Alabama, that's a very high spread here for a big game, even though it's not a top 25 matchup. Alabama obviously has looked really much better than Wisconsin in the first couple weeks of the season. The Badgers, they've been pretty much inconsistent on both sides of the football. I think the defense is probably the strength of this team right now, but the offense just has not been able to get things going. Tyler Van Dyke has not looked really consistent in the last couple weeks either. So yeah, this I think will be a really tough game here for Wisconsin, even though they're playing at home. I think they will have a chance here to pull off the upset, but based off of what Alabama's been doing in the last couple weeks, I feel like Alabama definitely is a much more better team than Wisconsin, based off of what I've seen so far throughout the first 2 weeks of the season. And again, we're learning more about these teams as we go into the first 4 weeks of the season, that you kind of need 4 weeks to kind of figure out how good these teams are going to be. And again, Alabama, I think, has been the much more better team in the last 2 weeks. And this game will be, of course, the big Fox noon kickoff. I'm going to go with Alabama here. I do like Alabama a little bit more than Wisconsin. I know Alabama struggled against South Florida in the first half of that game, but they ended up pulling away in the second half. So I feel like Alabama, with their offense, with their very explosive offense, they can go past this Wisconsin team, and their defense might have to really make the difference. But I think Alabama definitely, wins this one. They win it 31-17. Maybe Wisconsin scores more points than this, but I think Alabama definitely will take care of business, and they get the win here on the road at Wisconsin. And you might think this is probably the game of the weekend, which in my opinion, could be the game of the weekend, but again, there's just not really a ton of big games coming up this weekend here in week number 3. This is pretty much the only, Power 4 conference game in the non-conference, so Alabama and Wisconsin here. Again, I got Alabama winning this one 31-17. Next up, we got LSU versus South Carolina in an SEC matchup. This game will also be at noon Eastern time on ABC. LSU favored by 7 in this one, and the over and under is at 50.5. That's a pretty big number there, considering South Carolina beat Kentucky this past weekend. I did have South Carolina in my predictions from last week, and I did pick Kentucky to beat South Carolina, but South Carolina, of course, proved me wrong in that game, and they also could prove me wrong in this game as well. But you're going up against a more talented team like LSU. I think LSU definitely is a much more better team than Kentucky. This will be a tough offense to stop here for South Carolina as well. South Carolina's got a pretty good defense, though. Maybe they can keep LSU really, low scoring in this one. It is a road game for LSU, so it's a very tough place to play in Columbia. College game day, of course, going to be down here for this game. So I'm assuming this is probably the game of the weekend coming up. But I think LSU definitely is a much more talented team, and I think LSU is going to get better as the season goes along. Yes, they lost to USC a couple weeks ago, but I feel like this LSU team will be a lot different. Will the LSU team show up how they did against USC or how they did against last week? Well, we'll find out, but I got LSU winning here against South Carolina. It is a close one. It's a low-scoring type game, 24-21. And again, this is the game of the weekend for College Game Day. They will be down here at Columbia, South Carolina. But again, LSU's favored by 7. I would definitely not be really shocked if South Carolina, though, pulled off an upset, though, actually. So again, I'm going to go with LSU, though, 24-21. Next up, we got Boston College versus Missouri. This game will be at 12:45 Eastern Time on the SEC Network. Missouri favored by 17, and the over and under is at 53.5. I talked about this in my upset alert video from yesterday, how big of a spread that was. The Tigers are playing at home in this one. They should be the much more better team. But look at Boston College, what they've done in the first 2 weeks of the season. They ran the football pretty well against that Florida State defense, and the running game has been the biggest strength of this team. I think these are two teams that are going to want to run the football and waste the clock down, so I feel like this will be a low-scoring type game. But I do like Missouri here. I think they're definitely the more talented team. But again, I wouldn't really be shocked here if Boston College goes on the road and defeats Missouri and pulls off an upset here. But I'm actually going to go with Missouri here. I'm going to go with 27-20. I don't think they win by double digits. I think they just win by 7 points. A turnover probably changes the difference. A game-winning touchdown probably could change the difference as well. But again, both of these teams are going to run the football and waste that clock down. So again, I got Missouri beating Boston College here 27-20. Next up, we got Oregon versus Oregon State, 3:30 Eastern Time on Fox. Oregon favored by 16, and the over and under is at 50.5. So we got a rivalry game here, of course, a former Pac-12 matchup. It's now a non-conference game. It's now switched over to week number 3 this season, and of course, they played in the last game of the season, of course, every single year when Oregon was in the Pac-12. Now they switch over to the Big Ten. Of course, this rivalry maybe goes downhill for a little bit, but I think when you look at this matchup here, I think both of these teams are not pretty even. Oregon, obviously, the more talented team here, but you look at Oregon State, they got the home field advantage going into this game, so I feel like the Beavers might have a chance. I mean, based off of what Oregon's done in the last couple weeks, they have not played really well. So with that being said, I think Oregon might struggle for a little while. I think it does stay close here throughout 4 quarters. A turnover probably changes the difference, but I'm actually going to go with Oregon here. Again, I know Oregon has not played well in the last couple weeks, but I think a game-winning field goal, a turnover can probably change the difference. When it comes to like a rivalry game, anything can happen. But I got the Ducks winning this one in a close one. It's 27-24. Again, I think Oregon State really competes in this game, and they're going to fight really hard for a win here. But I got Oregon anyway winning this one, 27-24. Next game is Washington State versus Washington for the Apple Cup. This game will be at 3:30 Eastern Time on Peacock. Washington favored by 4.5, and the over and under is at 55.5. So another Pac-12 former rivalry game, that used to be played in the last game of the regular season as well. Both of these teams, of course, Washington State did not make a move from the Pac-12. Washington now makes a move for the Big Ten. So this is just like the Oregon versus Oregon State game. Washington State will come out really fired up and angry about, Washington switching conferences like Oregon State does. But, Washington does have the home field advantage in this one. This game actually was really close last year. Actually, this is a neutral site game. I'm really mistaken there. This is not a home and home, away situation. This is on a neutral site venue. I forgot about that in the offseason. Washington, though, I feel like they're the better team than Washington State. I feel like Washington State and Oregon State are just two teams that are not going to be really good as they were from last year. So with that being said, I think Washington, they're definitely the more better team here. But again, this game is pretty similar to the Oregon game and Oregon State game. They're both pretty even teams, and they're also going to really battle it out here in this rivalry. And a turnover probably changes the difference. I think this is a much more higher scoring game than the Oregon and Oregon State game. I'm going to pick Washington, though, to win this one 35-28. They win the Apple Cup here for the second straight year in a row. So I got the Huskies beating the Cougars here 35-28. And next up, we got West Virginia versus Pittsburgh, another rivalry game here at 3:30 Eastern Time on ESPN2. West Virginia favored by a field goal, and the over and under is at 60.5. So West Virginia a couple weeks ago lost to Penn State. They bounced back, of course, the next weekend. Do we think that West Virginia is still a dark horse team in the Big 12? I think so. I mean, they played a tough schedule so far in the first 3 weeks of the season. I mean, they had a cupcake game, of course, from last week, but, a couple weeks ago they had to play Penn State. And now they got Pittsburgh here coming out of the ACC. They go on the road to play this game. And that's obviously going to be very tough. This is a really big rivalry game, just like Oregon State and Oregon, and then, of course, Washington and Washington State. This is another big rivalry, that can go really either way. I think this is going to be a shootout here. I think both teams are pretty even. I like what Pittsburgh has looked like in the first couple weeks, and I think a lot of people really overreacted to Pittsburgh being the worst team in the ACC this year. I know they haven't played like a conference game, but this game will pretty much decide how good Pittsburgh is going to be. If they can beat West Virginia, a potential top 25 team, and I think the Panthers might actually have a really good season the rest of the way. I know they're coming off that sneaky win against another Big 12 team in Cincinnati from last week. So yeah, they could pull off a huge win here. I think Pittsburgh might have a chance to really go on to have a pretty good season, and that's what I'm going to go with here. I think Pittsburgh actually upsets West Virginia. I'm going to go 38-34. It's a shootout here. A turnover probably changes the difference. Maybe a game-winning score. You never know, again, when it comes to these rivalry games. So I got Pittsburgh and West Virginia here at 3:30 Eastern Time. And I got the Panthers winning this one 38-34. Next up, we got Texas A&M versus Florida, 3:30 Eastern Time on ABC. Aggies favored by 4 points, and the over and under is at 46.5. So we're not expecting a lot of points to be scored in this one. You look at Texas A&M; they lost to Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. It seems that loss now is not really. It's probably going to be a bad loss for them now on their resume because Notre Dame, of course, lost to Northern Illinois from last week. You look at Florida; they also lost to Miami a couple weeks ago. Both of these teams are actually pretty similar. I think Texas A&M, though, has definitely been the more better team than Florida has. I kind of been picking Texas A&M here to win this game, for quite some time in the last couple weeks. Even though I did pick Florida in the preseason to actually beat Texas A&M, I think these are two pretty even teams. And usually I go with the home field advantage, but I do like Texas A&M's defense. I think they're going to hold Florida's offense to really low-scoring points. I think it still will be a close game. It's a defensive game. And with that being said, I'm actually going to go 17-14 here for Texas A&M. I think they go on the road at the Swamp, one of the toughest places to play in college football, and they beat Florida here 17-14. Again, a low-scoring type game between both defensive teams. I think it's going to be a really big struggle here for the offenses for, pretty much both of these teams as well. And again, that's the reason why you're seeing the score here at 17-14. Then next up, we got Colorado versus Colorado State, 7:30 Eastern time on CBS. Buffalo's favored by 7, and the over and under is at 58.5. So yeah, that spread really shocks me, to be honest. Colorado favored by 7 by about a touchdown here against a Colorado State team that's not really a bad group of 5 team. Yes, they lost to Texas a couple weeks ago. They got shut out in that game 52-0. But Texas is a really good team, and that's the reason why Colorado State just could not really keep up with them. The defense just really could not keep up with their offense, and the offense just overall pretty struggled against that Texas defense. I think after Colorado State played that game, I think they're definitely going to be ready here for a big rivalry game against Colorado. Of course, this is one of the biggest games from last year, in week number 3 of the 2023 season. I think it's going to be another pretty good game here between these two teams. I do expect a competitive fight here by Colorado State. I think Colorado, though, is a much more better team than Colorado State is. I think the Buffaloes come out pretty angry after that loss to Nebraska from last week, and I think they'll probably bounce back here after that loss to Nebraska. So I think Colorado wins a close one over the Rams here, 28-24. Again, it is a rivalry game. You never know what can happen. I mean, Colorado State actually could probably pull off an upset here. I wouldn't really be shocked if Colorado State actually did that. But I'm actually going to go with the Buffaloes here, 28-24 as my final score prediction. Again, I don't really feel confident with these score predictions. I'm just choosing the team that I think is going to win. So again, Colorado wins this one, 28-24. And then finally, we got UCF versus TCU at 7:30 Eastern time on Fox. UCF actually favored in this one by 2.5. And the over and under is at 61.5. You look at both of these teams, are both really well consistent teams in the Big 12 this season. This will be the first, official Big 12 game that we get this weekend as well. I think both of these teams are pretty even. They got really both talented rosters, and they also got plenty of playmakers on both of their rosters as well. TCU, though, they have the home field advantage in this one, even though UCF is favored. I've been really back and forth on this game. It's kind of like similar to the Kansas State and Arizona game, where it's really back and forth that I have to go with home field advantage. And I did pick TCU here in the offseason to win it. I'm still going to not change my preseason pick. I'm going to go with the Horned Frogs here to win it in a shootout, 38-35. A game-winning field goal perhaps is the difference. Maybe also a turnover, like I said. Turnovers can really change games in a different way, and they can be the difference as well in these kind of games. So UCF and TCU, a big Big 12 conference matchup here on Saturday at 7:30 Eastern time. So those are my predictions here, my game picks and predictions heading into week number 3 of the 2024 college football season. Give me your guys' predictions down in the comments below on all 10 of these games that I choose from, and also who do you think is going to get upsetted this weekend as well as we head into week number 3. A pretty quiet weekend coming up this weekend in college football for 2024. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.